creeps and creatures, to Horror Nights Power Hour, your podcast that goes bump in the night and occasionally knocks just to see if you'll open the door. Today, we're going deep. Not underground cinema deep, not drive-in double feature with sticky floors deep. I mean root-level, marrow-sucking deep. We're talking the history of exploitation horror, the beautiful, sleazy, depraved, brilliant underbelly of cinema that shaped everything from slashers to found footage to the nastiest indie films clogging up festival submissions today. This is the story of how a bunch of filmmakers with no budgets, questionable morals, and unlimited imagination changed horror forever. Buckle up! Or don't. They sure didn't. Part 1. What the hell is exploitation? Let's define this beast before it bites. Exploitation film is one of those terms everybody throws around, like grindhouse, cult classic, or I swear the director meant for it to be that bad. But exploitation has a very specific DNA. At its core, exploitation film means cinema that exploits a taboo, a trend, or a fear to draw an audience. It's marketing-driven, bold, cheap, transgressive, and gloriously shameless. Exploitation horror takes that formula and asks, how far is too far? And then it runs a mile past the answer. These movies didn't have A-list stars, they didn't have big studios backing them, and they definitely didn't have approval from anyone's grandmother. But they had one thing that mattered: power. Raw, unfiltered, I can't believe this exists power. Part 2. The pre-exploitation spark, 1920s to 1940s. Our origin point isn't the 70s. It isn't drive-ins. It isn't even color film. No, the roots of exploitation horror stretch all the way back to the early 20th century, when film was still a shiny new toy. Back then, censorship boards were trying to strangle movies in their crib, so a few brilliant maniacs thought, what if we don't listen? Enter roadshow filmmakers. These guys traveled from town to town with movies that respectable cinemas wouldn't touch. Their films were mostly about sex ed, drugs, childbirth, anything the public wasn't supposed to see. But occasionally, they dipped into the strange, the grotesque, the freakish. 1932 gave us a landmark, Todd Browning's Freaks, a movie starring real sideshow performers. It wasn't considered horror at the time, but trust me, the audiences were horrified. Studios basically disowned Browning after that. And thus the first rule of exploitation horror was born. If Hollywood hates it, you're probably doing something right. Part 3. The 1950s, Atomic Fear and Outright Nonsense. Now we hit the 1950s, the age of communism panic, nuclear dread, and that mid-century genre I lovingly call science horror. This is where low-budget filmmakers realized all you needed was one monster suit, one panicked scream queen, and one narrator who sounds like he's warning us about satanic jazz music, and boom, you had a hit. Studios like American International Pictures, AIP, started cranking out drive-in sci-fi horror, giant bugs, radioactive mutants, teenagers turning into creatures because reasons. But the real magic was happening on the fringes, from filmmakers who thought, atomic monster movies are cool, but what if we add more blood? Spoiler, they added a lot more blood. It was the calm before the storm, because the 60s were about to go nuclear. Part 4. The 1960s, blood, psychos, and super weirdos. The 60s are when exploitation horror said, okay, enough teasing, let's traumatize people. First off, Herschel Gordon Lewis, the grandfather of gore. A man who woke up one day and decided movies didn't have enough intestines in them. He gave us classics like Blood Feast, 2000 Maniacs, The Wizard of Gore. These weren't movies, they were filmed Halloween haunted houses with plots sprinkled in like seasoning. Then you've got something else happening, an explosion of psychedelic, occult, and counterculture horror. Satan was trending hard. Witches, cults, LSD nightmares. Horror shifted from monsters to mindfuckery. And in 1968, George Romero walked in with Night of the Living Dead, made for pennies with a bleak ending, and proved the indie outsiders had teeth. Hollywood had no idea what was coming next. Part 5, the 1970s, the golden age of obscenity. Ah, yes, the 70s, the decade when exploitation horror didn't just bloom, it erupted. Censorship collapsed, drive-ins thrived, film stock was cheap, and filmmakers everywhere said, "Great, we can finally make the movies our nightmares have been pitching." Let's break down the categories. 1. Rape Revenge and Grindhouse Grit. Movies like I Spit on Your Grave, The Last House on the Left. These films weren't just movies, they were endurance tests. Controversial? Extremely. Influential? Massively. 2. Cannibal films. Oh yes, the Italian cannibal boom. You know exactly where this is going. Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox. These were films banned in multiple countries, seized by customs, and whispered about like cursed tapes. Problematic? Yes. Groundbreaking in found footage? Also yes. Would they get made today? Absolutely not, and that's exactly why they remain iconic. 3. Slashers are born. Exploitation walked so Jason, Michael, and Freddy could run. Early slashers like Torso, Black Christmas, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre were gritty, raw, and completely unpolished, the opposite of today's studio sheen. 4. Blaxploitation horror. Iconic films like Blackula, Blackenstein, and Ganja and Hess brought something new: style, swagger, and supernatural politics. 5. Women in prison and Nazi-sploitation. Yeah, the 70s were wild. These subgenres were so outrageous that even exploitation fans went, "All right, maybe tone it down a little." But they pushed boundaries and pushed audience stamina. 6. Occult and satanic panic. This era practically invented what we now consider creepy cult horror. Movies like The Brood, The Wicker Man, Suspiria. Pure chaos, pure art. And it was beautiful. Part 7, the 1980s, VHS takes over and anyone can make a horror film. The 80s gave us many things: neon, cocaine, hair so big it violated building codes, and the home video revolution. Suddenly, anyone with a camcorder could make a horror film, and they did. Oh boy, did they. This led to SOV, shot-on-video horror, titles like Sledgehammer and Boarding House, low budget, badly acted, but dripping with charm. The splatter era. The practical FX gods rose. Tom Savini, Screaming Mad George, the Chiodo brothers. They turned gore into art. Limbs flew, heads exploded. No MPA could stop the flood. Nasties, bans, outrage. The UK created the Video Nasty List, banning dozens of exploitation films. This only made fans want them more. Exploitation thrives under pressure. It feeds on forbidden fruit. Part 8, the 1990s, the Is Exploitation Dead era? The 90s were weird for horror. Studios got glossy, teen slashers got sexy, and the mainstream became the new safe space. So, where was exploitation? Still alive, just hiding. Independent filmmakers like Jorg Butgereit, Takashi Miike, and the Troma Crew kept the torch blazing. Films like Necromantic, Audition, and Everything Troma touched proved that exploitation wasn't dying. Oh, it was mutating. Part 8, 2000s, torture porn, found footage, and the new outlaws. People love to pretend the 2000s were all saw and hostile, but the truth is, this decade was the rebirth of exploitation spirit. 1. Torture porn. Mainstream critics freaked out. They said horror was getting too violent. Exploitation fans laughed. Getting? 2. Found footage boom. Blair Witch set the stage. Then Paranormal Activity, Wreck, Cloverfield brought in millions. Found footage is pure exploitation DNA. Cheap filming, raw performances, marketing first, leaves just enough to imagination. 3. The extremes. Foreign cinema blew up. Martyrs, Inside, a Serbian film, The Human Centipede. These movies made even veteran fans clutch their pearls. Exploitation had officially gone global. Part 9, 2010s Now, the art house exploitation renaissance. Here's the plot twist. Exploitation didn't die. It got nice clothes, good lighting, and A24 vibes. Movies like Hereditary, Midsummer, The Witch, Raw, The Green Inferno, a direct cannibal throwback, The House That Jack Built, Terrifier, and Terrifier 2. These films borrow everything from exploitation: taboo subjects, shocking violence, transgression, cults, extremity, social discomfort, but wrap it in art house prestige. Exploitation finally got invited to the fancy dinner party and showed up covered in blood. Part 10, Why Exploitation Horror Matters. Let's get philosophical for a second. Don't worry, I'll keep it twisted. Exploitation horror exists because people crave the forbidden. We're drawn to the edges, the shadows, the things we're not supposed to see. Hollywood gives us entertainment. Exploitation gives us confrontation. It challenges morals, censorship, authority, our own comfort. It's messy, it's problematic, it's offensive, and it's absolutely essential to the evolution of horror. Because without exploitation, we'd still be making werewolf movies with sweaters and polite dialogue. Final thoughts: the spirit lives on. Exploitation horror isn't a genre, it's a rebellion. A rebellious energy that refuses to play nice. It's the cinematic gutter where innovation grows like mold, strange, smelly, infectious, and impossible to ignore. Every year, new filmmakers pick up a camera and say, I don't have money, I don't have approval, I don't have boundaries, but I do have a story that punches in the gut. And that's exploitation. Cheap, bold, dangerous, unfiltered, alive. And maybe, just maybe, the purest form of horror we've got.
Love horror? Every Thursday, we turn down the lights for VSW's Horror Nights. Join me as we dive into chilling tales, interviews, and everything that keeps you up at night. Stream the VSW podcast anywhere you get your shows.
Let's talk about a film that doesn't just sit on the outer edge of horror, it hurls itself past the ledge, free falls into the abyss, and lands in a puddle of something you absolutely do not want on your shoes. We're diving into Jorg Buttgerite's Necromantic, one of the most notorious, reviled, banned, whispered about exploitation films ever made. A movie so taboo that even seasoned horror fans sometimes go pale and mutter, "Yeah, I've seen it once. I'm good." But here's the truth. Necromantic isn't just that necrophilia movie. It's not just shock for shock's sake. It's a grimy, art school provocation wrapped in exploitation skin, a low-budget fever dream about death, love, disgust, alienation, and the human body as an object in decay. And to understand it, really understand it, we have to treat it not like a joke, not like a dare film, but like a cultural artifact. A film that asks, what happens when a love story is built on a corpse? What happens when intimacy and rot fuse? What happens when art decides it hates taste, morals, and the audience, and dares you to keep watching? Let's dig up the body. 1. The birthplace of necromantic, a broken Berlin. To understand necromantic, you need to understand the artistic climate that spawned it. We're in the late 1970s into the 80s. West Berlin, a city cracked in half. A city drowning in punk culture, political despair, and smog. A sticky, crumbling landscape where young artists felt hopeless, angry, and creatively feral. Germany had a complicated relationship with horror at the time. Anything graphic or extreme was an instant target of censorship, moral panic, and public outrage. The country had trauma stitched into its national psyche, and many felt that horror, especially gore, was irresponsible, dangerous, or disrespectful. So naturally, a little crew of underground filmmakers said, let's make the most irresponsible, dangerous, disrespectful thing imaginable. Jörg Buttgereit wasn't trying to get rich or famous. He wasn't trying to imitate American slashers. He wasn't trying to make a fun popcorn movie. He was trying to make a statement that art should be free from moral framing, censorship, and respectability. That beauty can exist inside filth. That horror can be philosophical. That cinema should disturb. That the body, living or dead, is just matter. And matter decays. This is the soil necromantic groove-fem. Punk filmmaking, urban rot, anti-authoritarian art, a generation raised on censorship and determined to break every rule. 2. The plot, if we can call it that. At its core, necromantic is a love story. A very, very wrong one, but a love story nonetheless. Rob Schmadka, played by Dr. Lawrence, is a quiet, soft-spoken guy with one of the worst jobs imaginable. He works for a street cleaning company tasked with collecting the remains of accident victims. This means gore, blood, body parts, and trauma are literally his everyday routine. Rob doesn't mind. In fact, he enjoys it. He comes home after work with little souvenirs, eyes floating in jars, bones, preserved organs, a personal museum of mortality. His girlfriend, Betty, shares his interests, not in an edgy, goth girl, I like skulls because they look cool way. No, she is fully committed to their lifestyle of corpse-centered intimacy. Then comes the moment that defines the film. Rob brings home a full, decomposed corpse, a male body retrieved from a swamp. And he and Betty have a threesome with it. Yes, this is the scene that became the stuff of legend, censorship trials, and, oh my God, you have to see this, but please don't watch it near me. But as grotesque as it is, there's a meaning behind it, and we'll get there. After that, the story becomes a tragic spiral. Rob loses his job. Betty leaves him, taking the corpse with her. Rob's loneliness becomes unbearable. His mental state deteriorates rapidly, and the film ends with one of the most infamous finales in cinema history. But the shock value isn't the point. The disgust is a tool. The real question we need to ask is, why does this film use necrophilia as its central metaphor? What is it trying to expose or critique or rip open? And to answer that, we have to peel back the rotten layers. 3. Necrophilia as a metaphor for disconnection. In exploitation films, bodily transgression is often a tool for provocation. But in necromantic, necrophilia isn't just a taboo, it's a symbol. Rob and Betty aren't portrayed as monstrous villains. They aren't serial killers. They aren't evil. They're lonely, numb, detached from the world. They feel alienated in a society that seems sterile, artificial, hyper-civilized, and emotionally dead. So what do? They retreat into a form of intimacy where there are no expectations, no judgments, no rejection, No moral demands. A corpse can't abandon you. A corpse can't disappoint you. A corpse is the ultimate passive partner, silent, motionless, and completely yours. It's horrifying, but psychologically, it tracks. The necrophilia in Necromantic is a metaphor for people who feel so disconnected from society that they seek connection with something that can never hurt them. And this metaphor becomes extremely clear when Betty leaves Rob. She doesn't just break up with him, she leaves him for a corpse. Because the corpse, in her mind, is more emotionally stable than he is. That's dark comedy. That's tragedy. That's also social commentary on emotional decay in modern life. 4. The aesthetics of decay. Art film meets garbage heap. Let's talk visuals. Necromantic is ugly, on purpose. The film stock is grainy and blotchy. The lighting is uneven. The props look disturbingly real because many of them are real animal parts. The camera often lingers too long, forcing you to sit with the discomfort. But amidst the filth, Butcherite injects genuine beauty. Dreamy slow-motion sequences, provocative framing, surreal dreamscapes, romantic, melancholic music, scenes that feel like silent film poetry, bizarrely tender close-ups of gore. The film plays a constant tug-of-war between beauty and disgust. This isn't accidental. Butcherite was fascinated by the idea that death, real death, not Hollywood death, has a strange allure. Bodies rot, skin changes, fluids seep. But there is also something deeply vulnerable and honest about a corpse. A dead body can't lie, can't pretend, can't mask itself with social performativity. It is the one thing in human existence that is absolutely genuine. So the film's aesthetic is this: beauty through decomposition, love through decay, eroticism through revulsion. It's an attack on cinematic norms, and a reminder that real horror isn't clean and slick. It's earthbound, biological, and ugly. 5. The corpse. Symbol, object, and character. The corpse in Necromantic isn't just a prop, it's a character. Butcherite didn't design it to look like a fresh, clean movie body. It's decomposed. Soft tissues, skin slippage, discoloration. It looks like it smells horrible. It's partially skeletal, partially fleshy. Its mouth is warped open, eyes long gone. And yet, Betty is fond of it. She cuddles with it. She cares for it. She decorates it. The corpse becomes a lover, a friend, a rival, an object of devotion, and ultimately, a weapon. When Betty leaves Rob for the corpse, the movie is making a statement. Death is more reliable than the living. The corpse is also a symbol of Rob's emotional deterioration. When he first brings it home, he feels powerful, like he's bringing something meaningful into his life. When Betty leaves him, the corpse represents everything he can't control. When Rob kills himself at the end, in a scene we'll unpack later, the corpse becomes a metaphor for the inevitability of death as the final lover. There are layers. Deep, rotten layers. And Butcherite wants you to feel every one. 6. Body horror as emotional horror. Where most horror films use gore to scare, Necromantic uses gore to express emotion. Rob's collection of organs isn't meant to be shocking for shock's sake. They're comfort items, emotional souvenirs. He handles preserved eyeballs with the same tenderness someone might give to a photo album. The film is telling us the boundary between emotional life and physical decay is thinner than we think. Rob worships death because death never betrayed him. Death never abandoned him. Death is consistent. Death is honest. The film flips the usual equation. Instead of death symbolizing the end of feeling, death becomes the one place Rob can feel something. It's twisted, it's uncomfortable, and it's psychologically fascinating. 7. The rabbit scene, the most misunderstood moment. Let's talk the rabbit. There is a scene where a rabbit is killed on screen, a real one. This is one of the most controversial elements of the film, and understandably so. Butcherite said he didn't kill the rabbit for the movie. He filmed a pre-existing killing from a farm and incorporated it because the themes aligned. The collapse of the boundary between life and death. But here's the important part. That scene isn't about animal cruelty as entertainment. It's about Rob's internal world. We see the rabbit's death intercut with Rob's day-to-day life, his alienation, his emotional numbness. The scene is meant to show that living creatures die for mundane, routine reasons, food, work, survival, in ways that society accepts. So why do we react more violently to the rabbit scene than the corpse scene? Because real death hits harder than fake death. The film is confronting us with the selective morality of horror audiences. We accept gore, murder, slaughter, cannibalism, dismemberment, but show an animal dying and suddenly people have limits. Butcherite is calling out that hypocrisy. Not gently, not kindly, not politely. He shoves it in your face. 8. The breakup, when Betty leaves with a corpse. Betty leaving Rob is one of the strangest, funniest, and bleakest scenes in exploitation cinema. She leaves behind a note that basically says, "You're emotionally unstable. It's not me, it's you. I'm taking the corpse." It's dark comedy, but it's also the emotional climax of the film. Rob is devastated, not because he lost Betty necessarily, but because he lost the stability the corpse represented. The corpse was the center of their relationship, the anchor of their shared fantasy, the one thing that made them feel connected to the world. Once it's gone, Rob is forced to interact with real life again, and he's terrible at it. He goes on a date that goes horribly. He attempts intimacy and fails. He tries to function in society and becomes progressively more unstable. Betty leaving with the corpse is a symbolic rejection. Rob isn't good enough for death anymore. That's the psychological horror at the center of the film. 9. The final act, death as erotic peak. And now we get to the finale, one of the most infamous endings in cinema history. Rob kills himself. Graphically, poetically, erotically. The scene is constructed like a romantic climax. There's soft lighting, classical music, slow motion, a dreamlike haze. As he bleeds out, he experiences a euphoric state. We see his fantasies, rolling in fields, embracing Betty, the corpse returning to him, death as transcendence. And then the infamous shot of Rob ejaculating as he dies. People often reduce this scene to shock, but the symbolism is the entire point of the film. For Rob, death is the only thing that ever loved him back. His life has been rejected, lonely, alienating, filled with moral judgment, devoid of genuine connection. But death embraced him. Death accepted him. Death never criticizes. Death is intimate. Death is consistent. The eroticization of death here is not simply necrophilia. It's the ultimate metaphor for the release he's been seeking his entire life. It's disturbing. It's upsetting. It's tragic. It's thematic perfection. 10. Why necromantic isn't pornographic. It's provocative. People often dismiss necromantic as pornographic. It is explicitly sexual and shockingly graphic, but not pornographic in intent. Pornography aims to arouse. Necromantic aims to disturb. There is no erotic pleasure in the necrophilia scenes, not for the audience. They are shot with an uncanny, dreamlike detachment. The discomfort, not the arousal, is the goal. The sex scenes are meant to be de-romanticizing. Fluids look wrong, skin looks wrong, movements are awkward, music contrasts harshly. The corpse is simultaneously grotesque and absurdly tender. It's a parody of cinematic love scenes, a rejection of Hollywood's sanitized sexuality. Butchgerite is essentially saying, if you're disturbed by this, good. You should be disturbed by what movies normally sanitize. He weaponizes discomfort. 11. Taboo as a form of truth. Most films avoid taboo. Necromantic charges directly into it. The film's power comes from its refusal to look away. Death, decay, loneliness, sexual deviancy, societal rejection, emotional trauma. It asks, why are some truths off limits? Why do we sanitize death? Why do we hide decay? Why do we fear the natural processes of the body? In that sense, necrolantic aligns with the philosophy of the body found in Georges Bataille, Artaud, Marquis de Sade, the Viennese actionists. These artists believed that confronting taboo isn't corruption, it's liberation. An uncomfortable liberation. 12. The censorship battle when art makes governments sweat. Let's talk fallout. Necromantic was banned in Germany, Iceland, Norway, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, and many more territories. Video stores were raided, tapes were confiscated. Customs officials seized copies like the film was some biological hazard. Germany, in particular, came down hard. Butchgerite wasn't just questioned, his work was demonized. Critics called him a degenerate, a pervert, a danger to society, mentally ill, a disgrace to German culture. And what did this do? It made necromantic a cult phenomenon. Every band sold more tapes. Every moral panic created new fans. Every condemnation secured its place in film history. Censorship always backfires with exploitation cinema, and necromantic is exit A. 13. The legacy beyond shock. What is necromantic today? To some, a grotesque novelty. To others, a badge of honor. I survived necromantic. To most horror fans, a film they know about but avoid watching. But in film circles, especially academic ones, it's a respected work. A few reasons. 1. It's the defining necromantic film in cinema history. No other film has tackled the subject with this blend of nihilism, beauty, and punk sensibility. 2. It influenced extreme cinema worldwide. You don't get films like Inside, Martyrs, The Untold Story, A Serbian Film, Thanatomorphose, or even Antichrist without necromantic paving the way. 3. It shadowed censorship barriers. The film forced countries to redefine what obscenity even means. 4. It proved zero-budget films could be profound. Butchgerite made the film with scraps. Friends of actors, animal parts from butchers, borrowed corpses, Super 8 film, handmade FX, yet it became globally famous. 5. It made horror talk about death seriously. Not as a jump scare, not as a consequence of violence, but as a philosophical force. Death as love, death as obsession, death as the only stable relationship. That's the uncomfortable heart of necromantic. 14. Why people still watch it. Here's the thing. Necromantic isn't fun. It's not a party movie. It's not even a movie you enjoy. People watch it because it tests them. It challenges them. It shows the outer limit of cinematic expression. It forces them to confront their own boundaries. It represents true countercultural filmmaking. If mainstream horror is a roller coaster and art house horror is a museum, necromantic is the basement under the museum where someone scrawled poetry on the walls in bodily fluids. Fans of extreme cinema see it as a rite of passage. Film students see it as essential viewing. Academics see it as a milestone in taboo representation. And even if you hate it, you remember it. Forever, which is more than most films can say. 15. Necrophilia, love, and the human condition. At the deepest level, Necromantic is a film about longing, emptiness, death anxiety, emotional dysfunction, the fragility of intimacy, the fear of abandonment. Rob is not a monster. He's a broken person trying to fill the void. Betty isn't a villain. She's simply less afraid of death than she is of life. The film suggests a disturbing truth. Some people feel more comfort in death than in the living world. Death has no expectations. Death has no judgment. Death accepts everyone equally. In a twisted way, Necromantic is about finding love where love cannot exist. And that's why it lingers, why it fascinates, why it disgusts, why it sticks in the mind like a nightmare you didn't want but can't shake. 16. Final Analysis, a film about broken people in a broken world. When you strip away the shock, the gore, the taboo, the necrophilia, Necromantic is a character study. Rob lives in a society that feels sterile, cold, and meaningless. He has no passion, no joy, no connection. His job exposes him to constant death. His mind disconnects from the living world. He replaces emotional intimacy with physical decay. He seeks love in death because he cannot find it in life. Betty sees death as freedom from the constraints of the living. She finds comfort in what cannot change. Her leaving Rob is less about cruelty and more about choosing the only relationship she believes can't betray her. The corpse is the third character, silent, constant, unchanging, the perfect symbol of everything they yearn for: stability, acceptance, unconditional presence, twisted through taboo. And in the end, Rob's suicide is not defeat. It is union, reunion. His final act is an embrace of the only thing that ever felt safe to him. Death as lover, death as escape, death as climax. It's disturbing, it's poetic, it's tragic, it's philosophical, it's exploitation elevated to art. It's art dragged through the gutter.
Love horror? Every Thursday, we turn down the lights for VSW's Horror Nights. Join me as we dive into chilling tales, interviews, and everything that keeps you up at night. Stream the VSW podcast anywhere you get your shows.
If Necromantic is the funeral dirge of exploitation horror, meditative, rotting, internal, then Cannibal Holocaust is the violent thunderclap. It's the movie that hits you like a brick fired from a cannon. A film that doesn't just cross the line, it redraws the map and then lights the whole forest on fire. There are films that shock. There are films that disturb. And then there is Cannibal Holocaust, a film that still, more than 40 years later, feels like a freshly opened wound. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most fiercely debated, loudly condemned, deeply analyzed horror films ever made. You can praise it, you can hate it, you can call it exploitative, brilliant, reprehensible, groundbreaking, obscene, clever, irresponsible, and you'll be right every time. But here's the truth at the core of it. It changed horror forever. And to understand why, we have to walk straight into the jungle, into the heat, the sweat, the decay, the screaming, and sit with the film that refuses to let you be a passive viewer. Let's break it open. 1. The film that should not have worked, but did. When Ruggero Deodato made Cannibal Holocaust in 1979, he wasn't trying to make a grindhouse novelty. He wasn't trying to shock for shock's sake, even though shocking was inevitable. He was trying to make a film about the brutality of Western media, the way journalists exploit tragedy, the fetishism of violence, the arrogance of colonialism, the myth of civilized people, and yes, the monster behind the camera. The film isn't really about cannibals. It's about us, about the audience, about the viewer, about our appetite for the grotesque. The cannibals are the mirror, not the villains. And this is where the film becomes dangerous. Because when Deodato turned that mirror on society, society flipped out. 2. The plot, found footage before found footage existed. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Cannibal Holocaust is its structure. This movie, released in 1980, essentially invented found footage horror. 20 years before Blair Witch, 28 years before Wreck, 3 decades before Paranormal Activity. The story unfolds like this. Step 1. An American documentary crew goes missing in the Amazon rainforest. They were filming tribes. They vanish. Step 2. An anthropologist named Harold Monroe goes to find them. He discovers their remains, he retrieves their film reels. Step 3. The second half of the film is the recovered footage. The audience now sees what happened to the crew. And what happened wasn't a tragedy caused by savage cannibals, it was caused by the crew themselves. Their cruelty, manipulation, arrogance, and outright sadism. They burned villages, they staged massacres, they forced violence for the camera, they abused the tribes, they raped, they provoked, they escalated. They believed they were untouchable, that they could create good footage by orchestrating suffering. And eventually, the jungle strikes back. When the tribes finally kill them, brutally, painfully, methodically, it's not horror revenge fantasy, it's commentary. The footage exposes the Americans, not the cannibals, as the true villains. This narrative structure was so realistic, so raw, and so convincing that Deodato was arrested for murder. But we'll get to that. 3. The film with a body count in the real world. Let's talk about the controversies, because Cannibal Holocaust doesn't have one controversy, it has a whole graveyard of them. The animal deaths. Yes, they are real. Yes, they are graphic. Yes, they are disturbing. Yes, they're the hardest part for many viewers. Deodato maintains that the animal killings were done for tribal consumption and not staged solely for the film, but that doesn't remove the ethical questions. The violence felt too real. In the pre-CGI era, the gore was shockingly convincing, especially the impalement scene, a woman on a stake still twitching. People were convinced it was a genuine snuff murder. The court case. Italian authorities confiscated the film. Deodato was charged with making a snuff movie. To prove the actors were alive, the court demanded, bring them in, show them, prove they aren't dead. The actors were contractually hiding for a year to make the film feel more real. Their absence caused the legal firestorm. Eventually, they appeared in court, alive, annoyed, probably confused, and the murder charges were dropped. But obscenity charges stuck. Animal cruelty charges stuck. The film became notorious. And from all that chaos, Cannibal Holocaust became the most infamous horror film ever made. 5. The tribes, racism or anti-racism. Here's where the conversation gets messy, intentionally messy. The tribes in the film are often criticized as stereotypes, but Deodato's intention was the reverse, to expose colonial racism, not reinforce it. The tribes aren't shown as mindless savages. They are peaceful until provoked. They are not aggressors. They are victims. They are attacked, exploited, and manipulated by Westerners. The actual villains are the documentary crew, the producers back home, the Western media machine. The end film ends with Monroe asking, "Who are the real cannibals?" It's the thesis line of the entire movie. Deodato wanted to show that civilized countries commit atrocities just as horrific as anything the tribes do, often worse, but they hide them behind politics, military action, or media framing.
He wanted viewers to question, who decides what civilized means? Who benefits from representing other cultures as savages? Why do audiences trust the camera as truth? The film does not excuse violence, it reframes it. 6. Realism as horror, the visual language. The film's power lies in its realism. Everything looks dirty, hot, sweaty, smothering, handheld, chaotic. This isn't Hollywood jungle. It's not glamorous. It's not stylized. The film stock itself looks like it's decomposing. The images feel sick. The camera shakes as if trying to escape the scene. The found footage sequences use amateur framing, shaky zooms, bad focus, overexposure, wandering pans. Everything that cinematographers are taught not to do. But it's intentional. It sells the illusion. The recovered footage feels like a dangerous artifact, something you shouldn't be watching. There is an illicit, cursed quality to the images. And this realism became the template for every found footage film after it. 7. The music, beauty against horror. Let's talk about one of the most shocking contradictions in the film, Riz Ortolani's score. The music is beautiful, melodic, emotional, soft, even romantic. This is not grindhouse scoring. It is orchestral. It is haunting. It feels like a requiem. And when this gentle, aching music plays over scenes of brutality, the cognitive dissonance is devastating. Deodato wasn't just trying to sicken you, he was trying to move you. The score tells the real emotional truth of the film. Everything you're watching is a tragedy, not entertainment. It elevates the film from shock cinema to anti-violence commentary. 8. Why the violence hits so hard. There are a lot of violent horror films, but Cannibal Holocaust feels worse. Why? Because, 1. The violence lacks catharsis. There are no fun kills, no slasher thrills, no comic relief, no genre safety nets. 2. The film doesn't cut away. It lingers, it holds, it forces confrontation. 3. The violence is integrated into a moral argument. You're not watching violence as entertainment. You're watching violence as indictment. 4. The actors committed to the realism. Their performances feel unsafe, raw, improvised, unfiltered. 5. The film weaponizes ambiguity. When you're not sure what's real and what's fake, your mind fills the gaps with dread. The violence feels like documentary because the film is built to mimic a documentary. That's why it works and why it horrifies. 9. The television producers, the most important scene. One of the most overlooked scenes comes after the jungle footage. The network executives watch the reels. They're horrified, but not for the right reasons. They don't care about the tribes. They don't care about the suffering. They don't care about ethics. They care about ratings, public image, spin, narrative control. It's the reflection. One producer even says, "Can't we edit out the rape? Or at least make it look like the natives did it?" This scene exposes the corruption that Deodato wanted to criticize. Western media manufactures the truth. They don't record reality, they create it. The documentary crew staged their footage. The news producers edit their footage. Two sides of the same exploitation. 10. Is Cannibal Holocaust an exploitation film or an anti-exploitation film? Both. It exploits tribal settings, graphic violence, taboo, sensational marketing, grindhouse audiences, but it does so in order to criticize the audience for wanting it. It's the rare exploitation film that condemns exploitation. Diodato uses the very tools of grindhouse cinema, shock, gore, taboo, to expose the ugliness behind those tools. It's like the film is saying, you want savagery? You want gore? You want brutality? Fine, let me show you what that actually looks like. And by the end, you feel complicit. The film accuses the audience of being no different from the documentary crew, hungry for carnage, seduced by violence, drawn to taboo. It's a trap, a brilliant, uncomfortable trap. 11. The last line, a dagger to the audience. The film ends with Professor Monroe walking out of the studio, asking the question, I wonder who the real cannibals are. It's the single most important line, the line that reframes the entire film. He's not talking about the tribes. He's not talking about the crew. He's talking about society, about media, about viewers, about culture, about us. This is the moment Cannibal Holocaust becomes more than a horror film. It becomes a moral argument delivered in the language of exploitation. 12. The legacy. Filmmaking changed forever. Whether people want to admit it or not, every found footage film owes a debt to Cannibal Holocaust. Blair Witch, Cloverfield, REC, VHS, The Last Broadcast, Creep, The Taking of Deborah Logan, Hell House, the Poughkeepsie tapes. All of them use the template Diodato created. It also influenced brutality realism, faux documentary style, meta-commentary, social critique through horror, extreme cinema in Europe, the video nasty moral hysteria. It forced the world to confront what horror films can do, not just entertain, but provoke, accuse, indict. 13. Why people still watch it today. People watch Cannibal Holocaust today because it's historically important, it's artistically bold, it's ethically complicated, it's psychologically disturbing, it's culturally explosive. It's a dare, yes, a challenge, a test. But more than that, it's a film that forces you to ask, why do I watch violent movies? What am I getting out of this? What do I expect from horror? Why does human suffering feel like entertainment? Am I any different from the documentary crew? It's the kind of film that stays in your bloodstream long after the credits. 14. The uncomfortable truth. It meant to traumatize you. Diodato didn't want you to like this movie. He wanted you to feel gutted by it. He wanted you to feel implicated. He wanted you to feel dirty for watching it. And that's why the film endures. It succeeds. Brilliantly, brilliantly, terrifyingly. It remains one of the few horror films that is truly dangerous in intention, execution, and emotional impact. Not because of the cannibals, but because of the mirror it holds up. The most terrifying part of Cannibal Holocaust is not the jungle.
In the chair. You can't move. You can't scream. All you can do is listen.
Open wide! No, please!
Drill, the new horror from the dark side of the mouth in theaters.
Here is a spooky story to leave you with. Meet the White Nurse. They said the nurse in the ruined field hospital wore white because she wanted the dying to see something pure before they left this world. But the soldiers who crawled out of the Ardennes frost had a different story. Corporal Hines was the first to talk. He arrived at HQ half frozen, half conscious, buried under a blanket, whispering, "There's a woman in the trees." His hands shook violently, not from the cold. "She helps you," he said. "She smiles. She gives you warm water, puts a hand on your cheek, says she's here to take the pain away,
And you believe her. You really believe her. He stopped them, and the medic asked what she did next. Hines began to cry. She waits until you fall asleep, he choked out. Then she presses her palm against your mouth. Not to suffocate you. No, she lets you breathe. His voice cracked. She cuts you open, slow, precise, like she's studying you. The medic assumed it was frostbite hallucination, war shock, delirium. Until Private Darrow stumbled into camp 2 nights later, his uniform drenched in blood that wasn't his arm shredded like paper. She isn't human, he gasped. She moves without sound. She doesn't leave footprints. And she takes pieces. What pieces? Darrow looked down at his bandaged side. She took my kidney, he whispered. How he was still alive, no one understood. Finally, a squad was sent to the abandoned hospital where the nurse supposedly roamed. It was a charred skeleton of a building, beams sagging, beds overturned, icicles dripping from rusted surgical lights. Wind moaned down the empty corridors like wounded men calling for help. They found patient logs scattered on the floor, written in shaky German. Sister Magdalene assigned to night watch. Sister Magdalene performing unauthorized operations. Sister Magdalene does not sleep. Sister Magdalene observed speaking to corpses. Sister Magdalene must be contained. At the bottom of the final page, in dried brown ink, if she comes to you, do not breathe. The squad moved deeper inside. That's when they heard it. A soft humming. Sweet, warm, like a lullaby. A woman stepped into the moonlit hallway wearing a spotless white nurse's uniform, even though the world around her was ruin. Her hair was neat, her face calm, her lips curled into a gentle, maternal smile. "You boys look cold," she said softly. Her voice was soothing, disarming. "We're here to help you." The squad's lieutenant tried to lift his rifle, but something cold and delicate touched his wrist. Her hand, gloved, smooth, barely solid. "You don't need that," she whispered. His rifle dropped to the floor. The others tried to move, tried to shout, tried to run. But her presence pressed down on them like heavy anesthesia. Calm, comforting, suffocating. "You're hurt," she told them. "Let me take the pain away." In the morning, recon troops found the hospital empty. No gunshots, no struggle. Just 4 soldiers laid neatly on operating tables, sewn shut. Each missing something different. A heart, a lung, a pair of eyes, and a tongue. Pinned to the lieutenant's uniform was a note, written in elegant cursive. "Rest now. You are in good hands." They still hear her in that forest, soft humming, white uniform glowing between the trees, hands that feel like ice but cradle like a mother's touch. And if you're wounded, or tired, or lost, she'll appear, smiling sweetly, ready to take your pain away, piece by piece. Thanks for joining me on this sticky, sleazy, glorious journey through the dark heart of exploitation cinema. If you're brave enough, go watch one of the films we talked about tonight. But don't blame me if your sleep schedule never recovers. This has been your host, signing off from the Grindhouse gutter, reminding you, the forbidden is always more fun. Good night, and keep the tape rolling.